Professors that have been offered sexual favors by students or students that have offered sexual favors to professors. What happened? My brother is a professor at a large state school. He was propositioned so many times by students that he and the other 3 professors in their office suite agreed to arrange their office hours so that none of them would ever have to be alone with a student, female or male. Seriously. I'm a grad student. In our department, all TAs are required to meet with students publicly in the building's academic center, study lounge area, for this exact reason. Adjunct in engineering here, male, very few female students. Only once, one of them began trying to negotiate a better grade and put out escalating hints that a BJ was on the table. I just smiled, wished her a good day, and kept my boner under the table. So the BJ went from being on the table to under the table? She negotiated him under the table. The negotiations were short. She's gone up the ventilation shaft. It actually happened when I was teaching finance. The young lady asked if there were any non-academic ways to raise her grades, and suggested there were few places she was unwilling to go. I used it as a teaching moment. I suggested that she get a study partner, sign up for tutoring and learn how to do the work. I told her offering up sex for grades would destroy her confidence and self-esteem, but working for, and earning her grade, would help her for the rest of her life. She earned a B. A professor from my university walked into his office to a completely naked freshman girl standing in there with a 6-pack of beer. I don't think she was looking for a better grade or anything, was just attracted to him. He noped right the duck out of their edit, for the love of God, people. I don't know what kind of beer it was. Then he came back, took the 6-pack, and left again. Short story from someone I used to know. She was struggling in her astronomy class and went into office hours for the professor. She kept making hints and using body language to signal she was DTF, but apparently the professor just kept slowly moving the picture of his family on his desk further towards her until she left. Damn, that's a smart play. I was teaching an astronomy class in graduate school when the girlfriend of one of my roommates, both undergrads, offered to orally pleasure me for a B, and the roommate was okay with that. I passed on the offer. I like to think they had a conversation and a negotiation before presenting you the offer. I bet he would totally give me an A if I ducked him. Out of the question. Well, I don't really need an A. I just need a passing grade. Maybe he will pass me if I blow him. Nah, you give great head. That has to be worth a B. I like to think about the conversation that happened afterward. Your girlfriend offered to blow me for a B. Yeah, and she told me you said no. Of course, I would never do that to a friend. So what, she's not good enough for you? You son of a bitch. Or your girlfriend offered to blow me for a B. Yeah, and she told me you said no. Mate, she already has a B in the course. Happened when I taught in grad school. After I had collected the final exam for the semester, one of the most quiet students in the class started chatting me up as I locked up the room. We walked to the library from there and just made small talk. She seemed nice enough, but as I got to the library and put my stuff down, I told her that I needed some privacy to finish grading exams. She straight up tells me that she thinks I'm attractive and would like to hang out. She's bold because we're on the quiet floor of the library and it's packed since it's around finals time. Not wanting to be an ass, and a little shocked, I say sure and give her my number. Long story less long, I tell her we can't hang out until after grades were posted. She aced the class, didn't need any help from me to do it. Before we could even make it to a first date, we ended up hooking up in my car a few weeks after the semester was over. Told me that she was attracted to me from the very beginning of the semester and worked up the courage to ask me out after the final. Kudos to her. This is the right way to do it for both sides. If you're teaching, you can't ethically bang a student. If you're the student, you can't ethically force your teacher to make that call. She was upfront with her interest, and patient enough to wait until you could act on it. You were calm enough to set boundaries, and professional enough to hold off until it wouldn't be a professional issue. Yup, the only way this fantasy ends well. School excursion, 12th grade, Germany, most were around 18 by then. That one girl told us that she's about to get her grade upped by ducking the teacher who was with us and went over to his room. 5 minutes later, that teacher came knocking on our door, the room where most of us were just having a small party drinking and smoking pot, and we all panicked. After about 10 seconds, we had hidden most of the harder stuff and opened the door to see our teacher entering with a bottle of whiskey in his hand. "No booze here? I thought you're having a party?" After 15 minutes and about a quarter of that bottle, he left us again and told us to have an eye on that girl, because she will surely not be happy with the grade he will give her, and that trying to fuck him wouldn't make it any better. It took us a long while to understand that he came over to make sure we all learn about that story and give him an alibi. I remember asking my history teacher to bang for better grades. Sadly, she wasn't down for it, and neither were my classmates. I have more homeschooled stories if anyone's interested. I know my mom banged a professor in college. Ta-da! Here I am. Right on. My man. Looking good. Not me, but a professor friend of mine. Was older guy in late 40s teaching a business MBA class. Student in her late 30s gives him a card after exam grades were in, saying she has liked him all semester and would like to go out with him. That was like 11 years ago. They have been happily married for 9 years now. That's pretty wholesome, also professional. I see nothing wrong with asking out a professor after the semester is over, assuming you don't need to take any additional classes with them. Important to note that this is a 40-year-old and someone in their late 30s, and not a high school student. Then it's wholesome. Edit, just saying this because the title of the thread implied a negative act. This is just a nice story about two adults. My kindergarten teacher just didn't understand this. Back in high school, I saw a girl I knew walking around drunk in the middle of a shopping center, so I offered her a ride home. We had a math class together and she asked me if I thought our teacher was weird. I didn't think he was. She then told me how he lent her lunch money one day and to pay him back she tried to duck him, but he turned her down. For something as little as lunch money. It shook her that he turned her down. I then had to turn her down in exchange for the ride home. Now she probably thinks I'm weird. That sounds like the girl went through some traumatizing shit. Definitely. I heard multiple stories of her being abused, so I think she just expected it. That's some sad shit. Yeah, I have a friend who does some work with local groups trying to find safe homes for young people in really rough scenarios, across the board, male, female or otherwise. He said that when they would be asked by another group to transport someone, they would always send two people to transport the young person. One young woman kept offering sexual favors as payment for her transportation to a safe place. He was heartbroken to see that, since for her it just didn't compute that this isn't what he or his group were after at all, but what they were trying to keep her from. My friend is an adjunct professor of psychology and very, very gay. He would tell me of at least 3 freshman girls a year who would offer to do anything for a better grade. He would recommend better studying habits. Well, yeah. If he's, edit, very, very gay and they still offer, they obviously didn't study him very much. Not to me, but to my father. He was having a meeting with a student in his lab, and his colleague was working across the room. The student was coming on hard to him and he was doing his absent-minded professor thing and didn't really notice what she was up to. The colleague was apparently just killing himself at my dad's refusal to acknowledge and notice what was going on. He, the colleague, proceeded to tell that story at most every faculty party, which is how I heard it. I saw this happen to my own dad. I was back in town for Christmas after a few years overseas, and dropped by his lab to walk him to lunch. The second I gave him a hug, I saw one of his postdocs looking absolute daggers at me. The second he introduced me as his daughter, the color rushed back into her face and she was so happy she nearly hugged me herself. Later I asked him about her, and he just gave me an absent-minded look and said something about her being a nice girl, worries about me, always making sure I eat lunch. Dad's a longtime widower, so there wasn't any animosity on my part, just hilarity. Hess also pretty far along the autism spectrum, so if she really wants him she'll have to dial it up a bit.